Good morning, everyone. It's a beautiful Wednesday morning in Cape Town, South Africa, where we're enjoying a fantastic spring day. And thank you very much for taking the time to join us at the Co-Create Design Festival 2022. My name is Africa Melane, and it is a joy and pleasure to be hosting this festival, which is a culmination of what has been an exciting creative exchange dialogue series that went back to March of this year. Our focus has been around water and water-sensitive cities, and that's what we're going to be talking about today. This is a two-day festival, so we'll invite you to join us again tomorrow morning, where we focus on community, because one thing that has come out strongly in the series of dialogues is that whatever we discuss cannot really be realized or fully maximized as far as potential is concerned if we do not bring the community in. Today, we will be shining the spotlight on water-sensitive cities. We've got officials from the city of Theowatuskloof, city of Johannesburg. We've got a landscape architecture, that person, and we've got a specialist from the Netherlands as well, who'll be talking to why it's important for us to really put at the center of any design thinking when it comes to cities, sensitivities around water issues. And I hope you're going to join us for the next 2 hours with your questions. We are streaming live on both Facebook and YouTube. Use the comment section, please, to pose your questions to any of the panel members. And then when the time is right, we will obviously pose those questions to the panelists. This is made possible by the kindness, generosity, and the vision of the Consul General of the Kingdom of the Netherlands of South Africa in partnership with the Craft and Design Institute. This partnership has been in place now for more than 20 years, and I imagine we have another 20 years ahead of us. And of course, this particular festival was curated in partnership with the University of Cape Town's Future Water Institute, the City of Cape Town, as well as the Institute of Landscape Architecture in South Africa. And right at the top of the festival, our heartiest gratitude and heartfelt thanks to anyone and everyone that was involved, not only in getting the festival together, but also the creative exchange dialogues throughout. With me on stage is the Consul General of the Kingdom of the Netherlands in Cape Town, Helene Rekes. We've been on this journey for you, I suppose, the last couple of months because of your recent appointment to Cape Town, but certainly your office for the last couple of years. Why does this continue to be important to you?
Does it work?
Yes, it does.
Yes. Well, let me first thank you very much for your kind introduction, Africa, and a warm welcome to everybody here at this beautiful location and also our guests online. Indeed, my name is Helene Rekes. I'm the new Consul General here in Cape Town since August, and have been able to already join one of the sessions earlier, and now, of course, the festival. Yes, I think, well, that's what Co-Create is all about. We find it very important not only to use this as a brand name, but as a way to work together between the Netherlands and South Africa to build the relationship, to give answers and help think of solutions for local demands, and this partnership. And a partnership is something that you do over the years. And that is exactly what you said, the 20 years behind us, and important to continue to work together on this.
And that partnership, of course, primarily with the Craft and Design Institute, and Erica Alk is the group CEO for that institute. This is an important culmination of what has been, as I said, several months of dialogue and conversation.
Yes, it's been a very long journey, well, a kind of year-long journey. I'm looking forward to the sort of culmination of it, because I think we've had 4 creative exchanges where we focused on water-sensitive design, and now sort of it's coming together in these 2 days around obviously water in focus today and citizens in focus tomorrow. And what we hope to get out of the festival, also with the awards that are part of the process, is to be able to kind of put forward some sort of positioning around what could be best practice in this environment, going forward. And I think that the kind of themes that have come through the sessions, for me at least, the kind of two big themes, and it's going to be interesting to see how they come up today, is around the sort of multidisciplinary and sort of cross-professional practice that is involved in processes around water-sensitive design. And the other really important element is how important citizens are as part of the process. And those two things, in short conversation with somebody earlier, in terms of sort of the way the public sector works and can engage, those are two really difficult things to get right in the environment that we have set up in South Africa. So it's really important that we grapple with this, because I think it also impacts on other kind of big challenge issues in South Africa.
And I think it's important to note that just because there are big things doesn't mean that we cannot tackle them. And in fact, we should, because if we forge ahead without having those challenging things tackled, whatever result is never going to realize its maximum potential.
Exactly. So I think the sort of answer to sustainability on so many fronts is actually how individuals are engaged in processes, both at a professional level, but also just as a human citizen level.
Helen, one never thinks of the Kingdom of the Netherlands as necessarily a drought-stricken part of Europe, but it is. I mean, the notes in front of me says that you've had three, in fact, 2018, 2019, 2020, and even this year, you're going through a drought, even though you've got three major rivers in Europe that almost meet through the Kingdom of Netherlands. There are conversations happening in the Netherlands that are very similar to the ones happening here in Cape Town.
Yes, indeed. And as a matter of fact, this year was the driest summer for a century. So also in the Netherlands, that was unheard of. And we have always been a country fighting too much water. And now all of a sudden we are in a position where there was not, from those three big rivers, there was not enough water almost coming through anymore. So indeed, there's a lot of concern and talk about how we are going to tackle this phenomenon now.
And a wonderful opportunity, because one should never waste a crisis, right? Because this forces then the Kingdom of the Netherlands to rethink about how you get water, how you use it efficiently, how you minimize wastage, and all those important things that, once again, Cape Town had to tackle with in 2018,
yes.
And for completely different reasons, another big economic city of Joburg, is having to deal with as we speak.
Yes. Oh yes, absolutely. There's a lot of noise in the background. the work that is being done is now, and I'm sure that our experts from the Netherlands can say much more about this later on in the program. The work that is being done is also very applicable elsewhere, and hopefully also suitable here in South Africa.
Yeah. What I love about this exchange and dialogue and conference and festival is the fact that it is truly about collaboration. We're learning from what the Netherlands are doing, and more importantly, Netherlands is learning from what we are doing here. You made reference to multiple, I suppose, areas of specialization and professionalism where at times they can work in silos, and through this festival, it's a matter of, come guys, let's gather on the room and let's unlock the potential here.
I think that's so important, even, like more so in the environment that we're in, because I think the challenges we face are so complex and the solutions aren't always obvious. And in fact, sometimes the obvious solutions aren't necessarily the right solutions. And so I think we have to learn to listen to each other and to other people and to other expertise, and then find solutions that arise out of that sharing and out of that collaboration. I don't think it's not easy, and it is slow as well. And I think that we are impatient for solutions and for answers and for change. And I think the process of collaborating is a process that takes more time, and we need to learn to engage in that kind of wholeheartedly. a lot of the shortlisted awards that I was reading about, a lot of them point to that actually consultation, inclusion of multiple stakeholders, of citizens, slows processes down, but it slows it down, and then you can, in a way, you can move faster, and then the solution has more weight and has more standing because everyone has been involved in finding it.
And of course, the awards in question are the Co-Create Blue-Green Cities Design Awards, which will be announced at a glittering event tomorrow evening. And I say glittering because it really will be, and unfortunately, you're not there. But I will be, and I'm looking forward to that. It really is a celebration of what is already achieved in this space. We are at Young Blood, which is a magnificent gallery on Bree Street in the heart of Cape Town. And we have a number of posters in the room where the on-site delegates will have a chance to vote on who the recipient of the Most Valued Water Sensitive Innovation Award is going to be tomorrow. And of course, I'll share more details as the morning unfolds, and certainly details tomorrow as well. Let me say thank you very much to Helen Riekes, who is the Consul General of the Kingdom of the Netherlands in Cape Town, as well as to the Group CEO of the Craft and Design Institute, Erica Alk, for officially welcoming us to the festival. And of course, we'll start introducing you now to the panel members. The first of the panel members is Bernard Oberholzer. He's a landscape architect and environment planner with an architectural degree from the University of Cape Town, as well as a Master of Landscape Architecture from the University of Pennsylvania. We also joined from the Netherlands by Marga Oosterveld. Marga is the Dutch partnership manager of the Blue Deal Partnership in Eswatini and works at a water authority in the Netherlands. Lovely to have her joining us. And from Theewaterskloof, the city of Theewaterskloof, we've got Mangoba Ngubo, who's an acting municipal manager for that municipality. And joining me on the couch is Ondela Kiwakati. Ondela is the Principal Specialist for Water Services Regulation and Policy Development at the City of Joburg. And lovely to have you here, Ondela. Good morning.
Thank you, Africa. Very much thank you to the festival for having me here.
We will leave alone the political house of cards that is taking place at the City of Joburg, but perhaps start with an urgency for the citizens of Joburg. The Vaal Dam and the tributaries and the various reservoirs have enough water. They have, in some cases, more than 90% of water. And yet the citizens of Joburg have to go through water restrictions where at times of the day they're not able to open a tap and have water coming out of it. What's going on?
Currently, unfortunately, as the city, we are wholly dependent on rainwater for our potable water supply. And there's been a bit of system glitches on their side. I think a lot of it resulting from failures that are caused by the load shedding that's currently going on in the country. So few pump failures here and there and so forth. And unfortunately then they had to implement level 2 restrictions at short notice.
Here's a hard question. Does that mean that Joburg is not a water sensitive city?
Yes, currently as Joburg, we are not a water sensitive city. We've actually benchmarked ourselves recently through a study, and we've just developed a water security strategy to try and transition ourselves to being a water sensitive city. In that framework, we sort of a water conscious city. We are just starting to think about water sensitivity and just starting to initiate those conversations, but we are not there yet, and we certainly not water secure.
Why so late?
Wow, that's a very good question. In my opinion, I think generally in the water sector, we tend to speak about things for a very long time before we action them. And that's the unfortunate reality, because as the city we've had these MUSA reports, which are sort of municipal self-evaluation type of thing, assessments, and we've known for quite a while that we've got water security challenges, but for one reason or another, things seem to move at a snail pace. Paradigm shifts, of course, also that need to happen. People just liking to get stuck to their old ways of doing things, and not necessarily taking warnings into cognizance, because these have been warnings that have been for a while. I mean, yeah, the water scarcity issues of South Africa are something that were discussed before probably I was even in the water sector, because my background, I initially started in engineering, more in the more geotechnical and technical side of things, where I used to see groundwater as a nuisance as well. But you know, having listened into conversations in the water sector, even then, some of these things were being discussed already, but only now we're starting to move. Perhaps the Cape Town draft is what has made us to eventually really start having these conversations and taking them seriously.
No, for sure. Speaking of the Cape Town drought, Mangoba, let me bring you in. You are in the municipality of Theewaterskloof. Theewaterskloof is a catchment area for the biggest dam that feeds the network of water into the city of Cape Town. It's good to know that it's doing well. It is already 20% less than it was a year ago, but then we did have an anomaly in weather patterns a year ago. How important is it to your municipality to ensure that your design of the city is one that is water sensitive? Good morning.
Good morning, and good morning to all the other panelists. It's very important for us that whatever we do, whether it's for today, whether it's for tomorrow, we need to ensure that all the plans that we've got as a municipality are looking at sustainability long term. So it's no secret that over the last couple of weeks, due to load shedding, as gentlemen from the city of Johannesburg was saying, our infrastructure has also suffered quite a lot, because the zonal, in terms of Eskom zonals, where the dam is and where the actual town of Caledon is, which is the largest town in the municipality, we were operating on two separate load shedding zones. So we found that when Eskom was load shedding where the dam actually is, as well as load shedding us, was on two separate schedules. So you'd find that at times there was no electricity to pump the water up into the towns, but in the towns have got electricity, there's no electricity at the bottom to feed it. So it became very important that we are currently having a broader conversation as the municipality, led by the political leadership that we do have, in terms of ensuring that we've got an energy mix. How is our energy mix speaking to the needs of the municipality? Now, you will know that Theewaterskloof Dam doesn't only service the municipality Theewaterskloof. It actually is the largest dam in the Western Cape water supply. And the dam itself then is run by the Department of Water and Sanitation in collaboration with us, as well as the city of Cape Town. So all of that then becomes an integral part in that. How do we work with other municipalities in and around the Western Cape to ensure that whatever we do and whatever we implement speaks to the needs of all the municipalities? So it is very, very important, to come back to your question, in terms of how we structure and how we then place ourselves in being able to administer as well as roll out all the needs and meeting the demands.
I'm going to press on this. Load shedding has been around since 2008. We've been warned that it's going to continue for quite some time as Eskom seeks solutions to ensure stability of electricity. Why are we still blaming load shedding as a reason why we can't get water to municipalities? Surely we should have come up with alternative solutions to water, we can't live without water. It is a constitutional right. And you have an obligation, surely, as a municipality, to make sure that your citizens get access to water when they need it.
Completely agree. We can't keep hiding behind the issue of load shedding. However, what we have done as a municipality, we have initiated the process of applying to the Department of Water and Sanitation for the bulk infrastructure funding grant, which we've requested funding to the tune of about 1.3 billion rand. And that's a huge amount, and we are also very much cognitive of the fact that we won't receive this amount all in one go. However, since we've known about load shedding, it really has become quite important in terms of what we've done. Number one, applying to this infrastructure grant and ensuring that all the due diligence around that is being done. But also number two, we've got an issue of aged infrastructure. And I think it's the issue that most municipalities in South Africa are going to be able to have to be honest about. Our infrastructure is aged. Now, in the Western Cape, we've got another dynamic that is being added onto that, because you could easily ask, but why hasn't the infrastructure been maintained? Why hasn't the infrastructure been updated? Now, for that, we need to ensure that we've got funding. Over the last couple of years, funding has been cut. And I mean, this afternoon, we have the Minister of Finance delivering a mid-term budget speech. And even that, you will see that we are preempting that a lot of our budgets will be cut because we need to resource, or we need to reallocate funding to more pressing matters. So that is one. Number two, we've got generators in terms of Gearbox's. We've gone on leasing out generators. However, we do have a plan in terms of our procurement plan of purchasing them long term, because it's not feasible for us to keep on leasing these. So that's another way in which we're trying to adapt. However, the elephant in the room, Africa, as I knock off in terms of this point, is the fact that in South Africa, it's perceived that services are better provided in the Western Cape. And as a result, we've seen a major migration of people moving from elsewhere in the country, migrating into the Western Cape. And this then means we have got an influx of people coming in, which means even though we do try to respond to the growing need is a moving target. And people do believe that there's genuinely better life in the Western Cape, do believe that there is better services that gets provided in the Western Cape, and as that we then suffer having people coming in and the major influx in numbers. So we consistently are struggling to meet our own demands because, in inverted commas, we are too good for our own good. Yes, I think I'll leave it at that.
Mangoba, ESCOM is already a big enough issue. We're not going to go into issues of migration. That's another conference altogether. Benny, let me bring you into this conversation now. I suppose Ondela and Mangoba are sitting in bureaucracies that sadly seem to be reacting to challenges as opposed to proactively coming up with solutions to ensure that those challenges do not exist in the first place. So how do we use water-sensitive design, in your opinion, to ensure that we are moving towards a future as opposed to reacting to a past? We can hear you, Bernie, but you've got feedback, unfortunately. I'm not sure how we can resolve that. All right, no. Let's try and sort it out, Bernie, before we continue, because it really is distracting and people will not be able to hear you. So let's go to Netherlands now. Marga, in discussing, I suppose, an official welcome from the Consul General, we did reflect on the fact that the Netherlands, despite what we see, rivers flowing into the Netherlands, years and years and generations of trying to control the amount of water that is in certain parts of the country. Now you're sitting with the worst drought you've seen in quite a long time. How are you using water design sensitive approaches to deal with a future that might realize a water scarcity? Good morning.
Goedemorgen allemaal. Nice to be in Cape Town, even if it is just digitally. I think the water sensitive vision for the Netherlands comes down to clean, safe and sufficient water. And as you said, we used to be really good at that. And then we started experiencing droughts here as well. And that's really causing a challenge for us, because for the past, I think 50, 60, maybe 70 years, we've designed our country to get rid of a lot of water. The three main rivers in Europe, they all get to the sea via Holland. So when it rains in the Alps or in Germany, we know that eventually it will flow through our country. So we've designed our whole country for access for too much water. And as Helena also said, we've had 3 droughts in a row, not last year, but also last summer. I mean, we are in autumn now, so it has been raining a lot in September. But for the growing season for agriculture, for farmers, that's just been a little bit too late. So we need to rethink and basically redesign our country partly.
And how do you go about doing that, I wonder?
Well, fortunately, some of the measures that we've done to give extra space for when we have too much when we have too much water, we can also use those in droughts. In the old days, a river would used to circle. It wasn't a straight line. But then, as economic value of the river was getting more important, we made a lot of rivers just straight, taking out all the bends and all the meanders. But also by making it straight, a lot of water left the country quickly. So now that we need to have extra space for water when there is too much, we've created new bends in rivers. And this also means that water will remain longer in the country. But as you said, it's a challenge. I mean, with climate change, with sea level rise, with soil decline, and 60% of our country can be flooded. And I say 60% of our country, I must admit that Holland is a small country. I think it fits about 30 times in South Africa. So we're talking on a different scale here.
That's a reality, isn't it, Ondela, where the city of Joburg, when it was first envisaged, it was a very different, I suppose, vista, horizon, possibly even climate, certainly population to what it is now. Gauteng is officially the most populous province in the country, and Mangoba was making reference to the Western Cape having migratory issues, but Gauteng similarly facing those challenges as well.
Certainly. As you mentioned, Joburg, when it was designed, actually came out as a city of gold. Unlike other metropoles around the world that would have developed sort of around some form of a water source, we are far from a water source. We came about because of the gold. And so, Joburg was farms. It had lots of springs, interestingly, but all those springs were since covered and built upon. A lot of lakes and so forth, So we are in a position now where if we're going to sort of apply some of these water sensitive design principles, we need to go back. We need to have a vision that is long term. I think a lot of problem in the bureaucracy that you've mentioned is that we operate in a short term timelines. We only focusing on 1 year to 3 year budgets. We chasing financial year ends and so forth, and all our planning is really short term. But we really need to envision what the future will be forced to be with the climate change, and then we need to try and change direction towards that.
You keep on saying you need to. Who's doing it?
That's a very interesting question as well. And the answer to that will probably get me fired, but I'll go for it. I think we in the system, perhaps in the South African public system, have given a lot of decision making to political leadership, and unfortunately we've seen a bit of instabilities in that regard in the city of Joburg in particular, and so the we comes from the city operates on certain strategies. The city operates on particular documents, you call them, and every project and every action must be aligned to that particular strategy or vision. And if that keeps changing and is not aligning to water sensitive design, then we've got a problem. So we, meaning the city, both the technocrats and the political leadership, but needing a little bit of the power maybe to come towards the technocrats.
You're dealing with it sensitively, and I absolutely appreciate I suppose the stress you're under, because really we don't want you fired, we just want solutions. But as I happen to live in Cape Town, and we went through 2018 and the challenge that brought with it, in terms of counting down to day zero. We certainly appreciate the urgency of having to come up with solutions. And I'm hoping, at the very least, that the city of Joburg will use the challenge that they're facing now as a way of expediting and skipping over, I suppose, a lot of the bureaucratic processes that you are seemingly slowed down by in terms of realizing solutions. Because it's the economic hub of the country, if not the continent, and you cannot have the city the size of Joburg not able to have water coming out of taps. It's beyond imagination that is going to be the reality in the near future.
No, certainly. Like I said, we have developed a water security strategy. That process was concluded last year, but we're waiting for it to be approved by council, for it to be an official document. And so we are trying to make strides in certainly moving in that direction. Dialogues are certainly happening now in terms of even talking about alternative water sources. I think there was a bit of pockets here and there of those in the past few years, but now we're getting more and more people talking about issues of resilience and water being one of the key focus areas.
Mangoba, let me bring you in, because Tebatiskloof, I suppose, would, in the network and the municipalities that you're impacting on, agricultural municipalities or municipalities reliant on agriculture would be a major important client to you. How are we getting them less reliant on water that has fallen from the sky and connected by Tebatiskloof Dam, and more reliant on alternative sources of water?
Thanks, Africa. Am I audible?
Yes, you are. Go ahead.
So, Tebatiskloof as a municipality is actually 43% of the agricultural space within the Overberg region. So, agriculture is the largest contributor to our GDP as a municipality. And what we've seen happen with most of our farmers, especially in the Elgin-Grabo region, we're seeing quite a number of them using alternative space of energy. So in terms of them using boreholes, in terms of them using solar. There's also wind. So we've got a number of initiatives that the farmers themselves, from a private sector perspective, are running. We've also got an agency called the Equitable Development Agency, which is doing amazing work in terms of trying to collate and unify the farmers within the regions. And they've also got a number of initiatives that they're currently running. So we as a municipality are trying to enable the farms and businesses around the area. It's quite a critical and important part of what we're looking at doing for the next 5 years, and has been done for the last couple of years as well, is ensuring that however the municipality can enable the farmers, so in terms of allocating land, in terms of allocating resources, in terms of approving plans that are seeking to go green, and trying to ensure that we enable them to not try and frustrate them in terms of what they do. We do enable that, and we've got a number of initiatives where we do partner with the farmers as well, in terms of education, in terms of initiatives that they've got to try and ensure. But I thought I'd just highlight the Equitable Development Agency, which is doing amazing work with farmers around trying to source alternative sources for water, boreholes. We've got solar pumps and things of that nature.
And do we know how much water they're able to extract from there? And I mean, effectively, and this is a ballpark figure, so how much percentage of the water they would have drawn on Tiavaskloof is now saved as a result of these alternative sources of water?
So Africa, I'm not going to lie to you and the panelists. I don't even have a ballpark figure. However, I know it's quite substantial in that when we were having a couple of weeks back, we were having water challenges in the Equitable area. We had a number of the farmers being able to provide us as a municipality with water. And so that's how I know it is a substantial amount. And then we remain eternally grateful to the farmers for being able to collaborate with the municipality in the way that they have. But I don't have the exact amount.
Well, it's good to hear that it is that successful. Marga, I know you did some work in Eswatini. You're certainly most welcome to respond to what Mangoma was saying, but also if you can talk to the work around decentralizing of water management systems and how that process was undertaken in Eswatini. Go ahead.
Yes, thank you. I just wanted to add on the farmers what was said, that in Holland for the past, hundreds of years, water management has been done by the water authorities. And now that our climate is changing and we're facing less water scarcity, in some areas we've actually given the water management back to the farmers. It originally started with a group of farmers getting together and managing the water in their area. This is like in the 1200s, 1300s. And since then, the water authorities have just been centralized, basically, and taken over the water management. And now we're actually giving it back to a small group of farmers that they have to talk amongst each other how they are going to distribute the water. And of course, it doesn't go well immediately with everyone and every farm in every area, but it is one of the experiments we're trying to do. And as for...
Sorry, on that point, tell us about the benefits you've realized from this. So by taking it away from the water authority and returning it to the farmers, how has, the management of water benefited?
Well, the farmers, they know their lands best. They know what field or what area needs a little bit more water and which area can do with little less water. And not just of their own fields, but also of the whole area or the surrounding area. So they are actually, they have the best knowledge on how to distribute water if there's not enough. And they also see by the level in their waterways, in their ditches, whether they should already start in trying to retain as much water as possible. So they have the best knowledge for their local area.
And I suppose it's a different context, but how is the decentralization of the system in Eswatini working out?
It's a lengthy process. I've been told by one of the consultant companies in Holland that it's a process of about 10 years, and we are halfway now. So in Eswatini, water management was centralized by the ministries, and there are 5 rivers in Eswatini, So basically, there are 5 RBAs, river basin agencies, authorities, and but Eswatini is like Holland; it's a small country. So what they've decided to do is to join the operations. So instead of 5 different organizations, 5 RBAs, they have now set up one joint RBA organization. And that's just being gazetted in, it was in the midst of COVID, I think 2019, 20. And last year was the original launch. So we're halfway now. The organization that's there, it's gazetted, it's launched, so now we need to build. And what we do in the Blue Deal program is build upon it by sharing capacity, by all the Dutch mistakes that we've made over the centuries. And we're hoping that the Swazis will make a little bit less mistakes or learn. I mean, every context, every country is different. And it's not just that we're bringing knowledge, we want to empower each other. As the PS said of the ministry, we're working on participation and also learning from each other, because drought's new for us. And unfortunately, it's not new for Southern Africa.
Can I jump in there, Africa? Interestingly, you're speaking about decentralization, and yet now these river basin agencies have been amalgamated to one from 5. And the issue of decentralization and giving management to farmers and users and so forth, that's something that was envisaged by the National Water Act, you know. But the implementation thereof, unfortunately, has been lacking. We started with what we call water management areas that were supposed to be managed by these CMA catchment management agencies. And those catchment management agencies are meant to be users, from your farmers to your domestic, but it's meant to be these organizations that ensuring a partnership, participatory approach type of thing. But that has not been, I mean, the National Water Act, I think, came into effect, I think, 1998, you know. But unfortunately, the establishment of these CMAs has just been something, I think there were initially 21 of them, and then they shrunk it down to 14 and then revised it to 9. Now in the current promulgation, I think it's down to 6. So you can see that there's almost this centralization instead of decentralization that's taking place, one, but also the issue of just things moving slow in the water sector. Of these 6 that are now supposed to be, I think only 2 are established, and the other 4 is still to be established. So they've been reducing the number without these CMAs even being established, to be able to test them out, you know, how is it working? So the model has been changing, yet without any implementation thereof.
Is it because we just don't care about water?
I don't think it's because we do not care. I mean, water is a constitutional right, as you mentioned it. So there is a level of caring about it, the fact that or there is a level of seeing its importance.
But Onela, it's not urgent enough. So if there's legislation that's been in place, enacted in 1998, that has seen a dwindling and a more centralization of water's approach that was clearly not even tested enough to see whether it's going to benefit the country or not, it's telling me and telling us here that, I don't know, you don't care enough.
Look, from where I am sitting, I think it goes back again to the vision part of it that I mentioned earlier. And it goes back to leadership. There is a problem of not implementing, right? But on top of there being a problem of not implementing, the lack of agency is caused by the fact that we are not having a steadfast vision for the country that says, this is where we're going to implement. We keep coming up with these documents and changing them and never really getting to a point of action.
All right. At some point, I'm going to have to focus on actually practical solutions that have been implemented and work, so that we can celebrate how design thinking that is envisioning water-sensitive cities has actually come to fruition. And I hope that each of you have some examples to share and to celebrate. Mangoba, let me turn back to Tiavatoskloof again. Give me an example, please, of how water design-sensitive thinking and approach has resulted in a positive outcome for your municipality.
Thanks, Africa. So what we've done is we've partnered with the Netherlands consulate that is here in Cape Town. And we have a program that is run through Archbishop Thabo Makgoba as well. That we had a meeting, I think it was about a month and a half back, where we were discussing initiatives around Valisto, which is where our dam is. So we've done a lot in terms of that infrastructure, and that has helped us to be able to save water. So what we suffered from is about 35% water losses that the municipality was suffering on. Now we've been able to trim that down to just under 22%, and we are still working at doing more around that. So basically it's infrastructure that has been embedded within our network to try and assist us to detect water losses before they become too bad, and number two, to ensure that whatever we do in terms of retaining water, so water that flows into the system, we're trying to limit the amount of water losses that we've got throughout our towns, and that has worked amazingly. We are just hoping that we move from the 22% water losses, hopefully by the end of our financial year, which is 30 June next year, then we would be then sitting hopefully at below 15% water losses. Thanks.
And what about, I suppose, new developments that you're having to approve as a municipality? You alluded to it earlier. Western Cape is a very attractive province and people are moving from other provinces to here, which means your municipality has to grow. What is the municipality doing to make sure that whoever is developing those new areas and communities is in fact submitting plans that are showing sensitivity to water?
So what we're doing is that we work in collaboration with the Provincial Department of Local Government within the Western Cape, which is headed up by Minister or MEC Antoine Bredel. Through Mr. Bredel's office, we have got engineers that are deployed to the municipalities, and they help sit with anyone who's trying to come through with new projects around the engineering specifications. So we've got that as a free service from the provincial department. That's number one. Number two, we also, in terms of our own technical infrastructure team within the municipality, we visit our towns and we allow, like yesterday, there was a service provider that was dispatched by the Department of Water and Sanitation at national level to come through and have a look at our water desalination plants and seeing what we can do around that. So we are also open to triple Ps, which is public-private partnerships. So we, at the moment, are trying to expedite those with the help of National Treasury as well, because we must have approval from National Treasury before we can embark on those. So
let me be direct. If I'm submitting a plan to develop, whether it's a single household or multi-unit or whatever the case may be, is there a requirement from the municipality that I must demonstrate that my designs are sensitive to water issues in your municipality?
Yes, Africa, there is. We do have a requirement on that in terms of the forms that are filled out, and we also have a dedicated support structure within our offices who can help you craft that should you not have it in terms of your plans.
Okay, that's good to hear. Is it the same in the city of Joburg, Ondela? I'm trying
Look,
here. City of Joburg is an important city. It is responsible for the majority of the GDP in this country, and it's the city that is inviting me to come and stay.
Yeah.
All you've given me are reasons why I should stay in Cape Town this morning.
No, certainly we have policy in place. You know, as an activist in the space, you almost try to go and fight the non-compliance, and perhaps that's what you see most. But the policies are in place, and so there are lots of private developers that have implemented, but you know, we get not so easy when we see the non-compliance, and we ask ourselves, how did this go through? So there are still.
So how would it have gone through? I mean, if you have checks and balances,
Yeah.
and a clearly spelled out process that has granted a number of touch points throughout, I mean, how does it go to the next point if the initial point was not addressing your issues?
I think it's probably teething process issues, where the system is not fully rigorous enough yet, and yeah, who else knows?
Are you at least working on a process to identify what the shortcomings are and addressing those
Yes,
things?
certainly. Those are happening.
All right, now it's your turn to ask questions. You can indicate by putting your hand up, please, and a microphone will come to you. If you can give us your name, an organization that you're with, if you choose to, and then pose your question to a panelist, and then we'll try and go through as many of those questions as is possible. You all satisfied? There's a question there.
Thank you. Morning, everybody. My name is Togozani from a company called Ebmanias. I think my question is addressed to Ondela. I also want to find out a little bit more, like what sort of modern technologies is the city of Joburg implementing, you know, insofar as water resource management? Because I think from what you've said, the crisis that you find yourself in has been more of probably just managing the resource that you have, and maybe if you had some sort of technology, some of the decisions that you would have taken, or you would have been able to have data to align whatever decision you take in order to avoid the crisis that you see yourself in. That's just my opinion, but I just want to find out from you if there are any technological methods that you're applying now to try and combat that in the future.
Thank you.
Certainly, the city has got a policy in place to moving towards being a smart city. So we, in terms of non-revenue water, there's a whole lot of investment on that side, you know, whether from your PRVs or automation that's happening in that regard, to try and reduce the non-revenue water, the losses. But also the city is then also is at feasibility stages of looking into reuse, so looking at technologies of how to reuse our effluent, hopefully in future to direct potable. We have a groundwater exploration project that's happening, where we are using even solar energy for our groundwater boreholes. So we are trying to implement some new technologies here.
Do you have a follow-up to that? He has a follow-up. You can give him the microphone.
And maybe to add to that as well, with the water security strategy that I mentioned, we've got like about 7 strategic responses where we have different actions from short-term to long-term. And in the implementation plan of that water security strategy that we are currently busy with now, we actually partnering with World Resources Institute, and one of the projects that we're looking at is digitization of water, and that I think they partnering with one of the bigger tech companies as well, which will then hopefully expose us to more technology in terms of digitizing our systems.
Okay, no, I think I'm covered a bit, but it'll be interesting to see how you link the two, like the water resource with the people that use the water, because I think your challenge is not that you don't have water, you've got water, but it's just a distribution of it. But I mean, I feel if even the residents aren't aware of, what's happening, because I think from what I've heard and from what the residents have been saying is there's a shortage of water, but you've got water, it's just the distribution of it. So maybe, I don't know, my thinking was in line of trying to get that, even on a basic level, that level of communication and awareness of, if I'm staying in Joburg, what's my water dam level, what's happening now, why am I, just on that basic level, but I think hopefully you can get it right.
So the system is slightly different in Joburg in that we are not a water board, and so the monitoring of dam levels and so forth is not something that's necessarily of interest to the residents of Joburg, because we are buying our water from Rainwater. And so the interest from the residents' point of view is that we've got water supplied to them. But where we need to maybe slightly be more proactive in educating our residences is where that water is coming from. The fact that when it rains in Joburg, it does not necessarily mean that is feeding into our water resource scheme. We're sitting on a catchment divide, and so when people see water, they just automatically think then that means the Val Dam is full, and not necessarily. The water could be flowing northwards towards the Crocodile, which is not part of our water scheme. And the fact that we do not necessarily have enough water because we are buying water from Rainwater, but Rainwater also has limitations according to their water use license that they get from the Department of Water and Sanitation. And so the ever increasing and growing demand means that we've actually right now exceeded some of those limits, and so we actually need to come down. And so the fact that there is continued water coming out of the tap does not necessarily mean no, we've got enough water. And the current crisis is showing us that our demand is quite high, and the system is at a critical level that any small disturbance means that we're not resilient enough.
Yeah. Magda, let me actually bring you, and I'll come to you next, but how would the Blue Deal program that you've been working with help the city of Joburg in particular? Talk to us about the work that you're doing in that space.
Sorry, can you repeat it? There was a little bit of noise in the background.
The Blue Deal program that you are working on, where 2 Dutch ministries and all 21 Dutch water authorities are aiming to help 20 million people, I believe, around the world gain access to clean and safe water. Can you help the city of Joburg?
Yes, we can help the city of Joburg, and the New Deal program for South Africa. They have 3 programs. One is actually connected to Tailwaters Kloof, the dam and the municipality. One is in Black Box Sprout. Please help me with the correct name. And the third one is on the River Vaal, where they are trying to improve the water quality.
All right, it's good to know that you are intervening there in some way or the other and using some of your knowledge. We have a question at the back.
Yeah, hi, my name is Marlies den Boer and I work at the Netherlands Embassy. So I live in the city of Tshwane. So I'm sorry, my question is also for you, and I think that's the benefit of being here in person. So I actually have 3 questions. I'm sorry for that. So the first one is, we have stage 2 water restrictions, meaning we're not allowed to water our lawns or clean our cars or those kind of things. And everywhere I go, I see people irrigating their lawns. So people are not changing their behavior. And I think that is very crucial. And I think the Cape Town Day Zero really showed the power of changing people's behavior. And I think it's still institutionalized in the city and the people. So what is also the city of Joburg, and well, I'm sure you cannot speak for the city of Tshwane, but what is also being done on that aspect?
Let's take it one at a time. So that's question 1.
You know, that's a very interesting question. And the reason why I'm saying it's an interesting question is because when I engage my colleagues that are more into community engagement, stakeholder management, education and awareness, and so forth, they will feel like I'm attacking them when I say the messaging is not enough. Because they're saying, look, we're doing something in this area, and I'm saying, well, the residents do not seem to be getting the message on the other end. And so we need to be honest to ourselves and either intensify the messaging or find a way of repackaging the messaging. That's what I think. Because there are programs in place, but as to whether they are reaching the desired end goal, it's something else.
What about punitive measures, as in higher tariffs for excessive use of water? There was in fact a campaign where we would rat out sort of suburbs that were the highest consumers for that particular week. And that, I mean, it's shaming people into behaving properly, which is not ideal, but it certainly works towards reducing the consumption of water in those suburbs.
So Johannesburg has got a stepped tariff model, meaning the more you use water, the higher you pay per unit. But the fact of the matter is, tariffs have got a political side to them. You can only raise them to so much, and then there is then the balancing with the poor as well, that cannot necessarily afford all those ever increasing tariffs. But also the issue of willingness to pay is a serious problem in South Africa. And it's not only in water. If you speak to Gauteng residents, you speak about e-tolls, you know, there's a problem, and the problem is the issue of, I think, there's a trust deficit, right? The public is perceiving the municipalities or the government not to be using the funds appropriately, and because of that, then they like, no, why should I pay only for this to be misused. And therefore, when you say you have to pay for this service costs quite a bit, the public tends and say, well, maybe, start using the funds appropriately. Maybe that will reduce the costs. Maybe now you can afford and ask less of me. And I think it goes back to the education again. Once people understand the economic value of water, and get them to be more willing to pay for water, then we could get somewhere. Because at the moment, really, people view water as something of a constitutional right and therefore should be free.
Should the Metrocorps, so we will come to your two questions, I promise. I'll come to you now, Marga. Should the Metrocorps have a particular unit that is, tasked with policing? If there is somebody who's irrigating, they'll go in there, they'll issue an instant fine, they take your hose pipe away, or something to stop, because that's what it comes down to, right? We need to stop people from using their hose pipes and washing their cars when there's a shortage of water.
Yeah. Look, that's not an arena that I will dwell into much, but in Joburg, of course, Metrocorps, part of their function is bylaw enforcement, of which enforcing water restrictions will be part of that. But then comes the issue of capacity and so forth, and Metrocorps being more leaning towards public safety and traffic control than environmental and water related.
So your executive director needs to speak with the executive director of public safety.
Those engagements have happened, I believe, quite a few times.
Here and there.
But the capacity. No, I'm saying what I'm trying to show you is that we are ahead. We're trying to get those going.
Marga, you wanted to chip in there?
Yes, on the Day Zero campaign in Cape Town, when that happened, eventually it also became, well, not popular, but it got attention in the Dutch newspapers. And I mean, we're all the way up here, and so my curiosity was growing, and I was getting more and more interested. And then I found out that, as Marlies said, that people in the Cape area, they were reducing their water usage from like 129 liters a day to eventually 50 liters a day. And I'm thinking, how on earth are they managing that? I mean, it's a communications thing largely, but still people are doing it. So I was very much intrigued. And fortunately, a few weeks ago, I was able to get in touch with the City of Cape Town and talk to them about it, and also with people at the Dutch consulate in Cape Town. And I understood that communications was very important. I mean, it was everywhere, literally everywhere, on the signs above the roads, radio, TV, paper, everywhere. That was a key success factor, and also leadership. Not just the political leadership, but also in churches and professors.
Yeah.
And I think that was very interesting to learn and to find out what the key success factors were, especially now that there's more Day Zero problems. And I mean, the term has come back with Joburg, but also Nelson Mandela Bay, if I'm correct.
That is correct. I mean, I'm a broadcaster as a daytime job, and I was counting down every day. I'll say there are 92 days of water left. And that really, I think, forces people to change their behavior. Question number 2.
Thank you. My second question was more about the issue of water pollution, because while we talked about access to water and the fact that in Joburg we now don't have access to water, but I think a very interesting and very difficult other problem that the city is facing is water pollution. I mean, the Vaal River is quite polluted. How can sensitive city design also address the issue of water pollution?
Generally, water-sensitive urban design, in its essence, is trying put water on the forefront, so almost like elevate the prominence of water. So issues then of water quality come into play, because when we raise the awareness of water, that in some way would also raise issues of water quality. But also, I mean, other aspects of water sensitive cities are about reuse of the water. I think in addition to the fact that there are no punitive measures from national department to the municipalities, then the municipalities sort of do not prioritize the issue of pollution. It's there, it's in their radius, but as to whether they're putting enough money into it, you know, to avoid those spills and so forth, that's another question. And I think if we were to, for instance, be more into reuse, then we would be more aware of the water quality, because that's the same water that we're going to reuse. So it's going to cost us even more to clean it up. Whereas at the moment, it's a problem downstream, you know. If I'm polluting, there isn't a direct consequence to me at the moment. It's a problem that's sort of pushed to the downstream users, to the downstream communities. But if we were to intensify water sensitivity and start even applying issues of reuse, then certainly we would be more aware that we need to reuse this water, and therefore we need to be more mindful of its quality as it's going into the source.
We should probably note that the city of eThekwini in Durban, they're going exactly through the same problem. You can't swim in the ocean, or many beaches in KwaZulu-Natal, because of the E. coli challenge, and that comes obviously in part as a result of a pollution. Ngoba, let me bring you in here. Same question to you. How are you using water-sensitive design solutions to address issues of water pollution in your municipality?
So what we're doing in our municipality, Africa, is that we're looking at, so for instance, we've got a number of towns. So our municipality, if you come from the Somerset West side, city of Cape Town, as you come up Salori's Pass, our municipality begins. So it begins at Grabo and Elgin area. So around that area, like I indicated earlier on, in terms of the farmers coming together through the Grabo Development Agency, we're looking at, as the schools, there are a number of schools in Grabo which are utilizing water that is portal and catchment within the farming areas, and then we're able to then try and reroute that water into the schools. So that's number one. Number two, if you then leave Grabo and Elgin area and you drive towards Waterfield or Board River, you come down the hill, and there is a reservoir that we've got there as well. That reservoir is ensuring that the town of Board River or Waterfield is able to then have its own water. So we found that this was man-made by the municipality, so that we do have a water and catchment area there. That helps us a lot, because like I indicated earlier on, when Grabo didn't have water, when Caledon was suffering with water shortages, we were able to then reroute water that was meant for Board River to then go into those towns. So that is what we've done on a practical level, to ensure that we've got smart ways of ensuring that all of the towns can function independently, but can also then be co-sourced funding in terms of the water for other towns that are close by in terms of our municipality.
All right. And then your third and final question.
Yeah, my third question is more about finances, and I think we touched upon it already a bit in what you've already mentioned. But I think in South Africa, what I see is that a large part of the infrastructure is there, the piping systems are there, the wastewater treatment works are there, but they're not maintained and operated very well, and they're breaking down now. I think the blue drop shows it, the green drop shows it. And it largely also boils down to a lack of revenue around wastewater treatment and water services. So where's the money coming from? How do you sustainably manage those assets? In the Netherlands, we pay, for example, taxes to the water boards and taxes to the drinking water providers to clean our water. And these are ring-fenced, so they have an income stream that is dedicated, and I know I pay these taxes and it goes to my own water security. I know in South Africa such a system does not exist, so the revenue just goes to Treasury and then you get it back, and then the municipality decides on where to prioritize their funding needs. So I think that's for me a challenge in South Africa, is how do you make it more bankable? How do you create investments in your water assets? It's a challenge, and I'm trying to figure out what is a way how we can jointly address such a challenge. And I don't know if you have any ideas on how do you create a sustainable revenue stream around your water management and your water security?
That is part of my everyday challenge at work. It's basically trying to engage National Treasury. We definitely have that problem. The municipal revenue model, it doesn't work very well currently. We're sitting with that problem, and it's something that we are doing extensive consultations on, because we are also in a space now where we're drafting a policy that allows private entities, private organizations to use alternative water sources. And so how do we regulate that space? You know, we have had lots of applications coming through to the municipality of people wanting to create their own localized water security. But one of the biggest stumbling block is the revenue model currently, because then the question becomes, hang on, if we allow these large water users to have their own water supply, then how does the municipality generate revenue? That is something of my headache that's keeping me awake currently, and we're consulting different stakeholders, including National Treasury.
Mangoba, I know you want to chime in here, and I've got a couple of hands in response to this as well.
Thank you so much, Abka. I think we also need to be honest, and I like the honesty of the speaker before me from the city of Johannesburg. The reality of it is our funding model in terms of our local government space makes it very difficult for us to be able to craft something around us being able to be financially sustainable around our water projects. However, so the water boards do levy an amount which gets levied to the municipalities. Then the municipality can then source that money or recoup the money or pass it on to the residents, which is how then, in terms of the capital outlay that the water boards would have outlaid for us to have the infrastructure. However, I'm understanding the question to be, how are we then as municipalities ensuring that we've got financially sustainable ventures that stem from that? So, for instance, if you've got a hydropark that you've developed, how do you have a tourist destination around it? How do you try and generate a flow of income from that? And at the moment,
actually, sorry, Mangoba, it's actually more, it's more primary than that. How do you ensure that you get access to clean water that's safe and that is priced, I suppose, sensitively through public-private partnerships, if you like, perhaps special vehicle of ratepayers where if I can pay the city of Cape Town an extra R5 and I'll be assured of all these things, I will be happy to. That's what's happening in part in the Netherlands. It's not a revenue model that is available in South Africa.
So to a degree, it is available Africa, because what we've done is, here Waterskloof, is that our council meeting, I think 2 council meetings back, approved special rating zones. So those special rating zones in effect allow to do just that. So it says over and above the basic services that we're receiving, you can pay in inverted commas a premium as that ratepayers association, or whatever it might be. I've got a ratepayers meeting at 4 o'clock today around a similar thing. So, but you must have a council resolution, and there must be public participation on it. You need National Treasury to give you approval as well. There is a system of doing it. It's just, it doesn't happen overnight. So we've got, for instance, Greyton, which is one of our towns. It's just recently become now a residential zone that is allowed to do things of that nature. But like I'm saying, you must go through the public participation, you must have council approval, and you must have gone through all the red tapes around that. It is possible, it just takes forever.
Sorry. Mangoba, I think the question is around how do you ring fence to ensure that as money is coming into the municipality, you've got people that have paid for their water tariffs, but how do you ensure that that money then does not get used for housing or for something else, but it goes back into water infrastructure specifically?
Okay, so what we do as your Waterskloof is that in terms of our M-score account, so I think the simple response is that you need to have internal controls. However, that is just too high level to be saying. So you need to go a bit more specific to say, in terms of your monthly reporting on your M-score accounts and things of that nature, you must have your CFO, your budget office must be ensuring that they report. The moment you've got that fund that is ring-fenced, you must make sure it becomes a council agenda item, a standing item, so that you're reporting on how much has been received for that month and what has that money done. If you're not holding the officials to account on a monthly basis on that, or have internal controls around that, then you're going to find yourself once a quarter or once a year then saying, oh, oops, money that was meant for water infrastructure things has now gone and funded Roy Daka, which is a housing development which is being done here. So you must ensure that it then becomes a standing item. So the moment you've got that ring fence and ticked off as a rating zone, whatever it might be, then you must make sure that it's on the purview of council on a monthly basis, because then you're able to actually try and track what is happening with them.
Okay, all right. We've got a couple of questions. Microphones at the front here, please. There was another hand on the side as well. Not anymore.
Thank you. My name is Kirsty Carden from the Future Water Institute at UCT. Ondela, I think you're very hard on yourself. So I think Joburg does better than what you give them credit for, what you give yourself credit for. You've done a lot. So yeah.
Like what, Kirsty?
Well, through the Water Resources Institute work that they've done, through the benchmarking towards a water-sensitive city, through the development of policy around stormwater management. You work hand in hand with Gauteng Province. So I know, because I've worked with you on a lot of these projects, and Joburg struggles a lot institutionally, I think, far more than anything else. The siloed approach to water management becomes really more problematic than the sort of creation and implementation of policies.
Policies there.
Yeah, so I just wanted to make that note. And then I also wanted to, it's less of a question, sorry, Africa, than a comment about this whole funding thing, is that we're not only looking for revenue, we're also looking for cost benefit. And particularly because, as we've heard through the water quality discussions that have been raised today, that the environment is the one that suffers the most through all of these issues around water. Those costs get externalized onto the environment. So if we can start to show through water-sensitive design, and particularly the nature-based approaches that are fundamental to water-sensitive designs, sustainable drainage systems, the blue-green infrastructure that we're talking about at this design festival, if we can start showing that those have cost benefits beyond what would happen if we don't implement them, like what we've seen in the transformative riverine work in eThekwini, for example, and some of the work that Cape Town has been doing now through their Livable Urban Waterways program. If we could start showing that for each rand we spend on these decentralized, water-sensitive approaches, that we have cost benefits in terms of infrastructure and in terms of the use of water downstream, then that becomes very real and very easy to promote at city and town levels. So there
and I suppose an example of that is the tragedy that took place in KwaZulu-Natal with the massive floods. In the areas where interventions had been put in place that were water sensitive, we saw less damage from the flooding than in the areas that did not. And that's an example of what you're talking about, right? The cost of putting in place those interventions has actually had a benefit in the sense that it saved lives and livelihoods.
For sure, yeah. So, not everything is revenue earning, but it does create benefit, and it does create jobs and opportunities and certainly environmental impact, positive environmental impact. So, a lot of the conversations we have about the value of water are not only about the revenue that comes in, but also about what that water can do in terms of placemaking, in terms of livability, in terms of actually making our cities more water sensitive. So, yeah, it's complicated and wicked often, but there are lots of approaches that we need to put in place.
No, certainly, I agree, Kirsty. I think you're right, but I think Africa was looking more of examples of implementation on the ground. But in terms of policies that have been developed, I think as the city, we're doing quite well on a whole lot of broad things in terms of policy, but we really need to move to a point of action, and that's what we're hoping to get from our water security strategy now. As I said, some of these things, it's about having a long-term vision. So the life cycle costing that you're referring to and the cost benefit is what we're trying to show in the water security strategy, to say in the long term, you see the issue of funding, Mangoba, is a question of we get revenue as the city, and I think what Mangoba was talking about is more about after the allocation has been done. The budget allocation, yes, once you've got budget allocated, then it's easier to trace and monitor and see that it goes there. But where we're sitting is that the municipality is collecting a revenue, and I'm just making a figure, of 10 billion from water. But the municipality is needing that 10 billion for its maintenance and capital projects. But the city is saying, hang on, we are only getting revenue from water and electricity, but we need to also look at housing, we need to also look at roads, we also need to look at all these other things. And so this 10 billion, we can't just take it to water. We must now divide it between housing, water, roads, and all these other things.
Except
and I think that's where the challenge is.
The challenge that the city of Joburg is sitting now is that you're not even going to realize that 10 billion rand because you're not able to get water out of the tap in order for me to pay for it, for you to realize that 10 billion rand. But we get the point. Your question.
Yes, my name is Shilska Thijs, I'm from Soli. My question is related to the energy for the water supply, because I think in the beginning of the discussion you mentioned it's not so much water scarcity in the Gauteng area, but actually that there's no power to ensure that the distribution is actually done correctly. So the question is, are we going to wait for Eskom to sort out the energy supply, or is Joburg going to come with their own measurements, maybe a decentralized energy supply to make sure that water can be distributed?
Well, let me tell you what's happening in Cape Town. So Mayor Jordan Hill-Lewis made it very clear that we need to create a city that is less reliant on Eskom as far as supply of energy is concerned. As it is, we are saved a stage or two of load shedding because of Steenbos Dam, and of course a number of projects have already been out for tender, I think, that might realize energy from alternative sources in the city of Cape Town. It's a project that's probably a year or two away, so we won't see it in place tomorrow, but we're certainly going towards that. And a number of municipalities in the Western Cape are instructed, in fact, to look for those alternatives. Joburg, once you decide on your political mayorship, they'll make that decision, I imagine.
We had an energy indaba with the current, former or current mayor.
The current mayor of Joburg is Dr. Mpho Palatse.
Yes, with the current mayor. We had an energy indaba at the Senton Convention Center a couple of months ago, and following exactly that trajectory. And we hope she stays around to see that through.
And is the former ANC mayor, Dado Morero, not looking to take whatever came out of that indaba forward?
Look, that's the thing. When the court case was won yesterday, one of the pronouncements by the mayor is that we're going to review everything the mayor had put in place in the last month or so. And unfortunately, that is the tragedy, in that each political office comes in with their own priorities that do not necessarily, they don't want to be seen to be continuing the legacy of the former, but the needs of the residents are the same. And I don't see why these priorities should keep shifting.
Bit of context, there was a motion of no confidence in Dr. Mpho Palatse about 3 weeks ago, which, according to a High Court ruling in Johannesburg, was done illegally. So therefore, Dr. Mpho Palatse is now again the mayor, and her mayoral committee membership is now the membership. And the ANC, which now sits in the opposition benches, is saying they will redo the process. So in 2 weeks' time, in a month, we might have a different mayor in Joburg, which is why these become issues. Thank you very much for your question. There was a question in the green shirt.
Hello, hi, Rashik from Our Future Cities. I just have a quick question around water security. As an average Cape Townian, there's a lot of talk about dam levels, which is a very bad number to measure water security. So why is there no index from 0 to 100, which tells us 4 years ago we were at 33, or maybe worse, out of 100? The communication is still about dams being a percentage for, which is kind of irrelevant if we can't handle future shocks. There was talk about desalination plants, there's talk about sourcing water from other means, but I still don't know as a reasonably informed Cape Townian if we are more water secure than before, at all. I know that our consumption is down significantly, which will never go back to what it was before per household, but is there any indication that, apart from the reduction in consumption, that Cape Town or another city is more water secure than 3 or 4 years ago?
And what would go into this index, do you think? What other factors beyond dam levels?
If you repeat various scenarios and shocks, can the city cope? If there's no rain for 2 years, do you then start procurement for desalination? When do you start recycling water? When do you start tackling the flays and groundwater? So I just don't have no idea, if at all, there is any sort of water security improvement out of 100 compared to 3 years ago.
No, for sure. It's an important question. Marga, I'm gonna give that to you. Are there any such tools, such indexes that are available that perhaps South African cities can adopt? The reason why we use dam levels in Cape Town is because that's the only measure we have currently. And as we heard earlier from the city of Johannesburg, they don't even use dam levels as a measure of, I suppose, telling residents whether there's water security or not, because water is bought and then have to be distributed, so the challenges are very different. Is there such an index that allows us to take more than just dam levels as a factor in determining water security?
Well, in the Netherlands, the thing is we don't have dams. The drinking water is largely groundwater, which is being pumped up, and in some cases it's also river water. And concerning the river water, that's a little bit more visible, that we can more easily communicate when, well, for instance, in the last drought, some of the bigger cities in the western part of Holland, like Rotterdam and Amsterdam, they are getting their drinking water partly from a river that is flowing out to sea. And when there were droughts, you could see that the seawater would invade the country, and in several instances it would become very close to where the water inlet was for drinking water. And then we have, then there's a serious problem. And I believe in one instance, a community, I believe it was on one of the islands, drinking water was being shipped there. So not by the regular pipeline because they couldn't use it, but actually with a cargo ship bringing drinking water to a community. And that's very, very unusual for the Netherlands. And as for groundwater, the difficult thing is you can't see it. I mean, with dam levels, you can go to a dam and you can see that the water level is dropping, which makes it much easier for awareness with the public. Like, you really look, it used to be there and now it's a lot lower. There really is no more water. The day zero is creeping up on us.
Let me give a slightly, I suppose, practical example, right? So we're sitting at water dam levels about 81.8% generally in the network of dams in Cape Town. I know for a fact that we are 20% less than what we were at this time a year ago. South African Weather Services can give us some insight as to what the long-term forecasting for winter is going to be next week. How do you take all of those factors and put them into an index and tell Capetonians that an index out of 100, you are now at 55, and comparatively to last year when you were at 57, you're 3 points less secure than you were before?
I'm not sure I understand the question.
Did I summarize it? So okay, cool. Margaret, don't worry. Ondela's going to give us an answer.
To attempt to answer that's actually a very good question. And I think part of the benchmarking process that Cape Town actually also participated in, and Joburg recently. So it's a water sensitive city sort of index, and it does not only look at water availability. It takes into consideration issues of access. It takes into consideration issues of flood protection, impacts of climate change and so forth. And I know it's a relatively new index, and so perhaps we are still holding on to it only as the technocrats and not putting it out there.
So
and maybe, but
are
also,
you saying there is such an index?
There is such an index.
You're
yes.
just not communicating to us yet.
I think also because in South Africa I only know of Cape Town and Joburg that have done it, and so maybe that could be an index that could be taken and then be publicized, like your dam water levels, and then be tracked. The only thing is that then there's almost like there's gonna be a need to focus on that so that it's updated, whether every 2 years or so, because it's almost like a once-off exercise that you take, and it's an extensive public consultation process and so forth to see where residents feel they are in terms of access to water, flood protection, and all of those sort of things, governance issues and so forth. And so you have that, and then it sort of benchmarks you where you are in terms of a water sensitive city. Then you can add maybe one or two other things to give you, I think water security is embedded in that actually. But like I said, it's not something now that is being monitored like your dams, where from month to month, So it's an exercise that firstly, maybe we need more municipalities to do that. And then secondly, maybe an exercise that can be done every 2 years or 3 years to see where we are. That will be part of monitoring the water security strategy that the different cities have developed anyway.
I do think he wants it to be slightly more regular than every 2 to 3
Just
years.
just as an example, if in 10 years' time the dam's at 90% and we have 500,000 more people, it's a completely irrelevant number.
Yes,
But,
yes.
I don't know if we are now more water secure. Even yes or no, I don't know if we're more water secure than 4 or 5 years ago, or if we are becoming more water secure over time. There is no communication about that.
And I mean, an additional complexity is that if you live in, I don't know, the southern suburbs of Rondebosch and Newlands, you might be more water secure than if you live in the community of Danube.
Yeah.
We both live in the same city, but the one person has more water security than the other.
Yeah.
So a tool then that even is able to devolve it, if you like, into that granular space. That's an important question. That really is. Thank you.
Hi, morning. Sarah Polonsky. I'm from the Department of Environment, Forestry, Fisheries and Environment, but I'm speaking on behalf of myself, not to represent that disclaimer. I think also the question and the discussion around catchment, so water security is also about the health of the catchment, where the water's coming from. So in some ways the conversation around a city sort of de-links the city from its environmental, ecological context. And there's also issues, I think, around equity and justice embedded in that. So, for example, residents in KZN living on the lip of the Woodstock Dam have no water because all of that water is earmarked for Gauteng. So there are real complexities around equity, but also I think there's maybe something around seeing the cities more embedded in its context. I know there are governance and municipal boundaries that come into play, but I wonder, I'm not even sure what my question is, but maybe a response from the municipalities around their relationship to catchment health and catchment management, which is ultimately the source of water security.
I'm going to start with Manwaba, if that's okay, because he is in a municipality that has the largest dam and the catchment area for the province. Manwaba, your response to that question?
Sorry, Africa, I missed the lady a bit. Can she just give the question again?
Sure. I'm wondering, as a municipality, what your responsibility or what your sense of responsibility is to, and in fact, I think because you're in an agricultural space, it's clearer, but to the health of the catchment, which ultimately is where your water, that's your water source, whether it's in a dam or your groundwater, and there's a real issue with the health of our catchments for a whole range of reasons. Thank you. Is that clearer?
Yes, thank you so much. I've got that. So from our municipality, 60% of our water comes from overburg water, and 40% we then generate through ourselves. So we are quite good in terms of these green drop and blue drop status for water. So we at the moment are sitting quite high up in terms of our indices for that. And how we are able to try and ensure that we sustain or maintain that level of water clarity is that we've got, from the Department of Water and Sanitation, we've got random visits from them to be able to check the quality of the water. But what we do is that there's a system that we use, which is almost a system that uses far less chemicals and more organic. I'm looking for the right word of what the thing that gets used. But in trying to decrease the amount of chemicals that we use in the water, because at times the more chemicals that are used to clean the water, the more issues you're going to have at the end. I'm just looking for the right word for the chemical. It's a biodegradable thing that we do use for our water. But the water status, in terms of how we do when we do have the catchment area, is that we review and we try and test the water every day, and at times when we suspect that the quality might be influenced, we then have to test it at the beginning and at the end of the day to try and ensure that we maintain the right quality of water. Whenever we have got whenever we do have water problems or the load shedding, as you explained, we do have generators. However, at times we do need to use water tankers. When we are using water tankers, we then embark on a completely different process to ensure that the quality of the water. So at every water tanker, we then have a process of trying to check the quality of the water as well.
All right. Did that answer your question? Okay. Can we give her the microphone again, please?
So, I mean, water quality, that's one aspect of it. But for example, the amount of siltation in the rivers, the sort of broader catchment issues. I suppose in some ways what I'm talking about maybe is a kind of a sense of payment for ecosystem services where the end user is more directly paying for people higher up in the catchment to take care of their land in better ways because we're part of one system.
Thanks, Africa. So I think the lady has partly got it in terms of what she's saying in terms of the high areas versus the low. But what we are relatively blessed in terms of the Western Cape in that there is some sort of synergy that we've got between what we call Cape Nature. So Cape Nature looks at the ecological systems and all the famous in terms of around the areas where the dams are. So wherever there is a dam, we've got Cape Nature that partners with that dam to ensure that the ecology thereof is also looked at. So we've got those that really do assist us. However, in terms of one subsidizing the other, I'm not ruling that out at all. We do have some sort of structure in that way that is also looking at that.
All right, thank you very much. I'm going to give you a brief question, and then I've got a question here, and I've got a question there, and those will be the last round of questions before. So go ahead.
It's more just a comment on the amazing insight that cities are not municipal borders. As much as we like to confine our city, Cape Town gets most of its water outside of Cape Town, outside of the city of Cape Town. So we live in an ecological region in the same way that tourism doesn't stop at the city of Cape Town. It goes to Stellenbosch, and these are not. So I think the idea that we have ecological tourism, environmental regions, that should probably be in a water security index of sorts. But the interface to the majority in urban areas is probably that big municipality. But like we see in Johannesburg and places, the water and electricity comes from elsewhere. So I suppose the idea of municipal borders is extremely important. But in the sort of really deep work of cities and ecologies and environments becoming less relevant because there's just we are interlinked, and you don't leave Cape Town and enter Stellenbosch. You do, but we live in city regions. We don't really live in these borders.
Thank you.
No, certainly. If I can maybe jump in before the next question.
Can I get the last two questions? I'm literally left with 11 minutes.
Okay.
And I need you all to wrap up, and I'm trying to get through as many questions as possible. I promise you. Just keep that in mind.
Hello, I'm Craig. I'm from the Future Water Institute. I'm studying there. So I think I'm going to take us a bit back to your question on if there's an index. So if you go through the water strategy, I think the first, the city water strategy from 2018, they do mention something about assurance, the level of assurance, which I think before the drought we had about 1 in 50. And now they've tried to increase it. So that's currently what exists to kind of safeguard as a kind of measure to say every once in 50 years, at the worst case scenario, you probably won't be able to assure you to get water.
So that's what the 1 in 50 means. That out of a 50-year period, there'll be 1 year.
Probability is that to give a 2% probability of not being able to. But now they've kind of increased it to 1%. Is it 1% now? It's 0.5%. But they've made the probability less by measuring how much water they can supply. So in terms of augmentation, the water into the city, in terms of reducing demand, reducing leakage, and then projecting for climate change. Then you can kind of say, okay, if the climate change is this much and we've got this much water and this much demand, maybe we might not be able to assure you to have water like once in 200 years. Which was okay, but now, as we see, the drought was 1 in 300, so that was probably inevitable that we're going to have water. But it is there. It's not spoken as much, I feel, because practitioners, and we've done it in the space also, we like using terms that we think the public better understands, like dam levels. I saw that you, the gentleman from Johannesburg and the gentleman from they spoke about non-revenue water, which technically is not the correct term for talking about leakage, because non-revenue water is a percentage of what you are supplying. So if your leakage is 2 liters and you're supplying 10 liters, non-revenue water is 20%. But if I was to increase my supply to 20 liters, my non-revenue water decreases to 1%, to 10%, so 10%, right? So I can say I've improved my non-revenue water, but I've done nothing. I haven't fixed the leakage. So it's not the correct term, but it's the popular term. So I feel like the dam levels also, because I know that one is report about, we can use the infrastructure leakage index for leakage. We can use unpaid for water. But I know I've come to accept it, even though I don't like it, that we use terms that the public understand. But those terms are there, it's just that we probably choose to use the terms that the public most likely will understand. But I think that's also kind of infantilizing the public. We can try and explain better.
And I suppose the media have some role to play with that, right?
Yeah,
because we want the hits that Beyonce sings.
Yeah.
And dam levels is that. It's easy. Like it's literally easy to contextualize and to communicate that. So that becomes the issue. How often is this index 1 in 50, 1 in 200 measured?
So so I know that there's an update on the water strategy. I haven't gone through it all, unfortunately, but in theory, according to the water strategy, is something that needs to be updated with new climatic models, which the University of Cape Town is contributing to. The water demand is currently being looked at. We are going up, by the way. We're now back at 800 million liters a day from 1.2 before the drought and about 450 during the drought. So that is we managed a bit better. But I'm not sure about how often it's being updated. But we have a new water strategy, an updated strategy, and it came out this year, or just last year, so that's like what, 3 years?
Yeah.
So yeah, maybe that's going to be I don't know for the cities, I don't know how often they're going to do it, but let's just see 3 years for now.
Well, thank you for that insight anyway. Final question of the day. You okay. She's ceded her time to me, and I'm going to use it to get the final thoughts from our panelists. Marga, how do we ensure that water is put at the center of design going forward?
Well, that's the trick. That's basically the key. But I mean, water is life. Without water, there's no life for anything or anyone or any animal or any crop. But water is also complicated. So we need water to be sustainable. And for that, we have to collaborate and we have to participate and all to empower each other. And then finally in the benefit for water, and then we're back to water is life. So, we need to continue working together.
Thank you for that, and thank you for your time for the last 2 hours and your insights as well. Mangoba, same question to you. How do we ensure water is at the center of design going forward?
Thanks, Africa. I think simple response would be, in everything that we do, we need to ensure that we encompass water. So for instance, when people were speaking about an index, we had a number of those questions. We need to ensure that as municipalities, because we are the face of local government, whether you're a city, whether you're a municipality, you need to ensure that in whatever you specify for your building plans, you need to make sure that it's part of the requirements. We need to speak to water sensitive. We need to speak to how the design of whatever you're trying to do, whether it's solar, whether it's a building, how that speaks to water. So it must be embedded as part of the requirements. So I think that would be the easiest way to be able to ensure that in whatever we do, whether it's a IDP and whether we're speaking in wards, whenever anything new is being erected or constructed or being dreamt up, we must have the prerequisite requirement that speaks to the water sensitivity.
All right, thank you very much to you too for your time and for your insights this morning. Ondela, you get the final word before I wrap this up with Erica. How do we ensure that water is put at the center of design going forward?
I think I agree with the speakers that water is life and is everything. And I think what we need to realize is that water security is more than just water supply. We certainly will deal with water one way or the other in our cities, and with climate change effects, we then have a chance of trying to mitigate so that we do not deal with water in a very negative way, in sense. Whether is through floods or through droughts, nature is going to force us to deal with water. And therefore, with water-sensitive designs, we have the opportunity of determining how we will then deal with nature and ensure that there's sort of a resilience on our part and sustainability on the side of nature.
And perhaps a more appropriate word is how we respond to nature, because we won't be able to deal with it. Nature will impose itself on us, and some would argue that whatever it imposes on us is the result of human behavior, and that's a different conversation altogether. But if you're faced with floods or you're faced with drought, we need to respond to it and make sure that we continue to provide that water security.
Look, planning is the answer. Ultimately, what we're trying to build is resilience. Like you said, nature will impose on us, but how we're able to bounce back to whatever nature gives to us is what we're trying to work towards, and we're trying to ensure that whatever disaster that nature places on us, that would be able to be resilient, that would be able to build systems that will cushion the impact so that we are able to still survive.
On another day, we'll have a conversation about your shift from seeing groundwater as a nuisance to how you are seeing it now. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
And by the way, the reason why he was able to travel to Cape Town and join us, and Mangoba is sitting in Tevertiskloof, which is less than an hour away, is because Mangoba has a meeting at 4 o'clock, as he alluded to, with the ratepayers of Creighton. So he has to go from there to that meeting. So thank you to all our panelists, and thank you for your time and your insights this morning. Erica, it has been insightful in many ways, and I think what it keeps on reminding me is that whatever design thinking we need to embark on, certainly on the African continent, is more around systems and intervening in systems that will make life easier for its citizens. It's not product, it's not aesthetic, it's about how do we get, in the case of Joburg, the water from the Val Dam to somebody's tap, and do so in an effective way. How do we get an index that is communicated regularly that ensures that I know that I'm water safe today than I was yesterday, than I will be tomorrow, whatever the case may be. It's more around systems, isn't it?
Absolutely, Africa. So I mean, I think they're like big issues that have come up in the conversation. I mean, the question of, I mean, we all know this refrain that South Africa has the best policies in the world, we've got the best constitution, but we really bleep at implementing them. And so, and the question I wanted to ask was, like, what is that about? What really is, it can't just be about the politicians interfering, it's got to also be about the system and the PFMA or the MFMA or whatever that actually kind of gets in the way of action, of delivery, of implementing really, really good policies. So yeah, I mean, I think that was one of the things that struck me, the question of kind of aging infrastructure and the investment required to invest in it. But the big thing that I'm taking away, and it is the comments coming up more sort of towards the end of the conversation, that we are actually in one system. And water, you know, we want to put water in the center of it, but we are actually part of the system, And so rather than, I think, we've got to change our mindset around controlling and managing water, but working in harmony with it in nature. So I've sort of come away thinking that water-sensitive design really seems to me about going back to nature, reversing the tendency to make the rivers straight and let the rivers show us what maybe they know better than what we know. So how do we really look at what's happening around us, the signs that are coming to us around what's happening with water, with climate change, and take that as clues to how we should be responding. And the other big thing, I think...
Sorry, just to emphasize that point.
Yeah.
So when the water falls from the sky into a catchment area, it's not thinking the National Department of Water and Sanitation is now responsible for me, and then it sort of travels through a system to go to Rand Water, travels through a system to go City of Joburg Water, that then, do you know what I mean? Like it's water that is, as you say, all part of one system.
And in a way changing this idea that groundwater is a nuisance.
Yeah.
But actually the water's falling from the sky to water the earth. How do we live with that? Instead of imposing our systems and kind of concrete onto that, how do we really listen to what's happening? And then key to that, I think, is about us individually as human beings and citizens taking more responsibility for the way we work with and live with our natural resources. So, this question of an index, we should all be interested in what is how much water is available, what's happening to the water, what are we doing when we're throwing things on the floor or on the ground. So and maybe this is also where the media has a role to play, is in conscientizing us to, yes, water may be a constitutional right, but what is our obligation in response to that right? We can't just take our rights for granted. There's something that we need to do in return.
No, that's very true. Well, it's been a fascinating day. Today has been all about water in focus. We've certainly highlighted some of the shortcomings, and hopefully in the process we started to inspire you to come up with solutions to some of those challenges. Tomorrow morning we gather again at 10 o'clock right here on this space, and our focus tomorrow is going to be on communities and how we bring communities into this conversation and almost have them leading some of the design-led solutions that still focus on water. Ultimately, we are designing Africa's blue-green cities, and there must be cities for all. It should not matter where in that city you live. We all have a right to life, to water. Water is life, and let's do what we can to appreciate that and celebrate it, but also remember the responsibility that comes with it. Thank you very much for joining us this Wednesday morning. Do enjoy the rest of your afternoon, and we'll see you back here again tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock.